Nintendo has done several enhanced remakes of older games over the years, such as the HD remakes of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on the Wii U, both of which I own but haven't actually played yet, to having Okami HD released on the eShop, but there will always be games that really need a remake but get completely overlooked. That's why I'm here to go through my top 5 games that I'd love to see get the enhanced remake treatment on the Switch. I do have a few minor conditions for a game to be eligible for this list. 1. The game must have been on a previous Nintendo console. I considered putting games like God of War on here, as a Switch remake would give those of us that never owned a PlayStation and so never had the opportunity to play the original games an opportunity to see what all the fuss is about. But I highly doubt a series that is essentially a PlayStation exclusive would be a plausible Switch remake. 2. It needs to be a game that I've actually played. I only mention this because I can already see comments saying my list is dumb because I didn't mention games like Super Mario Galaxy. They may have gotten rave reviews and they may be great candidates for HD remakes on the Switch, but I haven't played either of them, so meh. 3. It needs to be actually legally possible to happen. Blame Eternal Darkness for this rule. Yes, it's an amazing game. Yes, a remake would be amazing, but seeing as Silicon Knights, who developed the game, was declared bankrupt in May 2014, you can probably see where this is going. I'm not a legal expert, but if there is a way it could happen despite Silicon Knights no longer existing, please let there be a way of it happening despite Silicon Knights no longer existing, it would take a very high position on this list. And finally, it can't be a game that has already had a remake, it just wasn't released on a Nintendo console, so no Resident Evil 2. Yes, I hope the remake gets ported to the Switch, but games I'd like to see get ported to the Switch could be a whole other list in itself. Anyway, I've jabbered on long enough, so let's get on with the list. Turok Rage Wars. I never got to play the main Turok trilogy on the N64. I bought the 3 games a few years ago so I could do a 1 vs 2 vs 3, and they've all been sat on a shelf since. One Turok game I did play back in the day and loved was Turok Rage Wars, which was essentially a good old deathmatch game. Each of the many characters had an individual campaign, there were medals and cheats to unlock, and the usual multiplayer madness, including a 2-player co-op. It was an amazing fun game, and when you add in the option for online multiplayer, there are so many possibilities. It would be higher on the list, but the single player campaign, while being okay and makes for some fun times, it could do with being a bit more fleshed out. Also, although the games were developed by Acclaim Studios Austin as Iguana Entertainment, and Acclaim Studios went bankrupt in September 2004, they auctioned off the rights to a load of their games. Turok was picked up by Propaganda Games, who did a reboot in 2008. Propaganda Games was a subsidiary of Disney Interactive Studios, which was owned by the Walt Disney Company through Disney Interactive. Propaganda Games closed in 2011 due to Disney Interactive Studios being shut down, so it could well be that Disney Interactive still owns the rights, so it's a bit of a grey area, but it still sounds like a remake is possible. Maybe have 1 to 3 and Rage Wars in a nice collection pack. Shadow Man. Another N64 game developed by Acclaim, this time Acclaim Studios T-Side, which became part of Iguana, so the copyright malarkey from Turok applies here too, and is why it isn't higher on this list. Shadow Man was the first horror game I ever played, and I won't talk too much about the game itself, as I did a video on it a few years ago to see if the game I loved back in 1999 still holds up today. I'll put a link in the description. Spoiler for that video, it really does. It was very Metroid-esque in its exploration, and while there wasn't really much in the way of puzzles, it still had some creepy areas, decent cutscenes, and more than one nightmare-inducing enemy. There are so many things that could be done with this game if it was given a little upgrade. There was a sequel, but it was only released on the PlayStation 2, so chances of getting that one as well are even slimmer than just getting the first one. Golden Sun. I loved Golden Sun and its sequel The Lost Age. Dark Dawn was good, but ended rather abruptly without finishing its story. The GBA games, however, were genius. It had everything going for it: a large world to explore, amazing story, decent puzzles, and some very cool summons. I've actually done a video on my 5 favourite summons, I'll put a link to that video in the description as well. And lots to find and do, all added up to one hell of a great experience. Granted, it could be a tad cutscene heavy at times, and some scenes dragged on longer than they really needed to, but it's a small price to pay for the greatness of everything else. If Golden Sun 1 and 2 could be given a full remake, I'd buy it straight away. They can keep the turn-based combat, the text box chatting if they really need to, they don't bother me, but to be able to experience Wayard in this new way would be absolutely incredible. Come on Camelot, give Mario sports games a rest and give us us the RPG we've been crying out for years. Phantasy Star Online Episodes 1 and 2. My god, this game sucked so many hours out of me over the years. This would be the first game I had where my playtime was in the hundreds of hours. It was such a fun game, and although it's grind-tastic, I really didn't mind the grind to get hold of some of the great weapons the game has to offer. 3 character classes, each with 4 different options, loads of quests, lots of equipment to hunt, and seeing as it has the word online in the title, it'll be a superb MMO for the Switch. It would be great if all the stuff that was online only in the original release was available offline in a remake, and even better still if it could include the episode 4 content from Blue Burst. But even if we just got episodes 1 and 2 as they were on the GameCube and Xbox, I'd be more than happy with that. There is a Phantasy Star Online 2, but it's only available in Japan, and seeing as the English website for the game was taken down in November 2017, it's unlikely that game will ever get a Western release, so here's hoping for a PSO remake instead. Xenoblade Chronicles. For a while this was my all-time favourite game until I played Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The first one though is an absolutely amazing game and one I really want to replay. The story is incredibly deep, it has an amazing roster of characters, some of the most beautiful locations in all of gaming, and Hero Pon Ricky. I did a brief review of the game a few years ago, again link in the description, and while I couldn't praise the game enough, it did have a few annoyances, like if you needed to speak to someone to finish a quest, the person wouldn't appear on the map unless you happen to get close to them, which could mean a lot of wandering around hoping to stumble across them, unless you ask Google for their exact location, which could be easily remedied in the remake. I know I said games that already had a remake weren't legible for this list, but the 3DS version was a port, not a remake. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is one of the best-selling games on the Switch, and aspects of Xenoblade 1 and 2 have appeared in Smash Bros, but having the first game remade for the Switch would be an absolute dream come true. So there we go, 5 games, well I suppose 6 technically, seeing as I put both GBA Golden Sun games on here I'd love to see remade for the Switch. Most likely none of them are actually going to happen, but I can dream. As always, let me know what you thought as well as any other games I could do with a Switch remake, but for now, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.